And we start with this. And first of all, in fact, I did get this big moment. I did get my first presidential retweet last night. Always an exciting moment, kind of a coming of age for conservative pundits when they get the Trump retweet. And the post of mine on Twitter that Trump retweeted was this video, which we discussed yesterday on the show. And let me play it for you again here.
Oh,
boy, don't touch me. Don't touch me.
I didn't touch you.
Don't touch me.
I didn't touch you.
Don't quit touching me. Yeah, them hurt. Them hurt. Stop moving.
Sorry, man.
Them hurt.
I'm
Don't
sorry.
touch me.
That right there, as we talked about yesterday, is a white Macy's employee being brutally assaulted by a black man in the middle of the store, and this happened a few days ago. The video shows the assailant, his name's Demir Palmer, punching the man in the head, as you saw, as he crawls on the ground, begging for Palmer to stop. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you don't have the video. That's what you see there. The assailant's brother, who filmed the crime and posted it proudly to social media, claims that the victim used the N-word prior to this assault taking place. Now, even if that was true, that wouldn't remotely justify felony assault, but it isn't true. Macy's investigated. They confirmed the attack was unprovoked. Also, the N-word claim is just absurd on its face. A Macy's employee is not going to casually refer to his black customers as a racial slur, okay? If he was in the habit of doing that, he would have been fired a long time ago. Macy's is not going to fall on the sword to defend an employee who uses racial slurs. That's just not something corporations are going to do. Now, what actually happened from the looks of it is that the Palmer brothers selected a victim based on his race, beat him mercilessly, and then slandered him. They damaged him physically and then tried to ruin his life for good measure. If the hate crime designation has any meaning, this should fit the bill. Yet to this point, no hate crime charges have been filed. In fact, no charges of any kind have been filed as I say this right now. There's been the guy who carried out the assault has not been arrested, even though it's on video. We have it right there, and they know his name. Somehow hasn't been arrested. No charges at all have been filed so far because of that. It should be noted that a man who assaulted a Macy's employee last year was charged with a hate crime. A somewhat similar situation, just in the fact that it was a Macy's employee being assaulted in the store. And that person was charged with a hate crime, but in that case, it's because he used anti-gay slurs during the attack. It's not clear to me that the customer or the employee was actually gay. I'm not sure if he was or not. All it says in the news reports is that the person carrying out the assault used anti-gay slurs. The prosecutor in the case said that the attacker, quote, subjected the victim to offensive physical contact, and this was done, quote, because of his perception of the victim's sexual orientation. Well, was this latest Macy's assault not offensive physical contact, and was it not due to the attacker's perception of the victim's race? How is one a hate crime and this isn't? Now, this unfortunately is not an isolated incident. Recently, there's been a slew of horrific physical attacks against white people. Last week, a group of black men attacked a white man in a gas station parking lot in Texas. And this is everything I'm talking about here. These are all on video. They punched him. They knocked him to the ground. They stomped on his head when he was lying there. Now, I'm not going to play all these videos for you because they're pretty violent and they're disturbing. And I'm not going to force you to watch them if you don't want to. But you can go to my Twitter feed and you can find them. I've linked all of them there. And I would recommend, if you think you can stomach it, just go. It's one of those things you have to sort of see for yourself to understand the severity of the situation. In New York, a black man pushed a 92-year-old white woman to the ground. She bashed her head against a fire hydrant as she fell. She was 92 years old. No hate crime charges have been filed. She was going along on her walker down the street. This guy walks by, just pushes her and walks away. In another attack against the elderly, Jaden T. Hayden of Michigan, maybe you saw this video, he was repeatedly beating a 75-year-old nursing home patient in the head as he lay helpless on his bed. Now, the interesting thing is that Hayden has YouTube videos where he claims that, among other things, quote, the black race is supposed to rule the earth. no hate crime charges have been filed so far in this case. But try to imagine the same outcome if a white man with similar professed views about the white race, let's say a white man who had YouTube videos saying that the white race is supposed to rule the earth, and then if that man were to go and film himself brutalizing an elderly black man, how quickly do you think hate crime charges would be filed in that case? Like within 10 seconds, maybe at the speed of light, they would be, they would come out. There are more examples. So other examples of these assaults that we're talking about. During the riots in Rochester a few weeks ago, a white woman was attacked by a group of black men. She was punched in the face repeatedly, beaten with a wooden board. In Ocean City, where violence has been rampant of late, there have been several examples of this, but there's one video where a guy's sitting on a park bench and is knocked to the floor. Again, no hate crime charges. And hate crime charges aren't the only thing missing here. There has been little public attention to or condemnation of these attacks. In fact, I've been told that it's racist to even talk about them. If you go to my Twitter feed and you see where I have these videos posted, whether it's the Macy's one or the longer thread where I post all of the videos I just mentioned, you find lots of people either outright defending felony assaults of white people or insisting that I'm a racist for calling attention to it. And there's no explanation provided. They don't explain why it's racist to point out when a white person is brutally assaulted. It's assumed that we all understand. Like it's a given. But, well, of course that's racist. You can't do that. Why can't you do it? Well, you just can't. It's just not something you can do. That's all. Just a few random examples. Here are some responses justifying the assault of the Macy's employee, which you saw. Just a few random responses on my page. One person says, an eyewitness says the black man asked the employee a question, then became angry when the Macy's salesperson who was on his phone used the N-word when he got back to his call, thinking he'd done so discreetly. So no, it's not a hate crime. It's a guy angered by racism. So this is a person saying that basically it's okay because he was angry about a word that he heard. Now, as I've already said, that word was not said. These guys made that story up. And it's very clear that they made it up. And the story is absurd on its face. But regardless, you cannot beat a man to a pulp because you heard a word you don't like. No, someone else says he's clearly saying, I'm sorry, implying that he indeed said or did something to result in getting punked like that. Making the white guy a victim is far-fetched. I know plenty of white men like this that pop off at the mouth and expect nothing bad to happen. It's far-fetched. That video you just saw, with a white man on the ground being pummeled, it's far-fetched to say that he's a victim. Someone else says, firstly, 3 punches isn't brutally assaulted. Second, if it was a white person beating a black person, I'm sure you will believe the black person must have done something to deserve it, and even go so far as to dig up past criminal records. The problem, it's a problem no matter what we do. Oh, it's not brutally assaulted. That wasn't a brutal assault. It's just a regular assault. That's just a standard assault. No problem there. And then other stuff like that. Now, once again, the guy did not say the N-word. The story was fabricated. But the idea that the assailant is entitled to commit felony assault because of a bad word is lunacy. And it's all besides the point. The attack was unprovoked, as were most of the attacks that I just listed. Yet no hate crime charges have been filed. Now, let me say that I am not personally a proponent of the hate crime designation. I don't like it. I don't think the prosecutors can look into a criminal's heart and accurately assess whether a crime was motivated by hatred or not. I don't know how they can do that. They can't do it. And even if they could, I'm not sure why a crime of hate should be considered any more severe than a crime of greed or jealousy or anger or boredom or indifference. Is it really worse to shoot a man for his race than for his wallet? Haven't you treated him as less than human either way? Haven't you killed him either way? Isn't he just as dead in both cases? Isn't his family mourning him just the same no matter what? Now, the common response to that is that hate crimes have a special effect on the community. in that they terrorize and intimidate people. And so that's why there's a reason to respond, especially aggressively to them. And it's true that, an actual hate crime is going to terrorize the community, but then criminals who kill people for money or for their shoes or for the cash in the register also terrorize communities and intimidate. Communities beset by such crime are often crippled by fear. If you live in a community like that, it's like you don't even want to let your kids leave the house. So I don't see much of a difference in that case either. People might be crippled by fear and terrorized for different reasons, but they're still terrorized, they're still in fear, and people are still dying. There's no reason to think that hatred is the worst possible motivator for a crime. I would say that, in fact, that indifference to human life is actually the worst, and it motivates the worst kinds of crime. Mass shootings, many mass shootings, school shootings, serial killers, psychopaths. These are people who don't care about human life enough to, they don't care about human life enough to hate it. Like, they're going to kill you, but they don't care about you enough to hate you. You just mean nothing to them. They're indifferent to you. Totally empty inside. Killing just for the fun of it. Just for the thrill. Now, that seems to me to be a reason to kill someone at least as evil as hate. But then again, killing someone, if it's not in self-defense or in defense of somebody else, is evil no matter what. And I'm not convinced that there can be a more or less evil reason to do it. The whole conversation becomes absurd after a while. Yet this is what our justice system has done. It's come up with a sort of tier system ranking the reasons to kill people or assault people from worst to best. This is a really bad, a bad reason, but not the worst reason. And this reason is a little bit worse, and this is the worst reason to do it. It's ridiculous. And not only is that ranking system subjective, but the judgment of why someone performed an act is also subjective. So this is subjectivity on top of subjectivity. And that's why we shouldn't have the hate crime label at all, in my opinion. But if we're going to go down this road, and if we've gotten into the business of doling out special punishments for hate-based crimes, and if we've assumed that prosecutors and judges have mind-reading abilities, then equal justice under the law means prosecuting crimes against white people with all the same gusto as crimes against non-white people. And that's not happening here. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.